Huskies win 77-60 over Alcorn State, and they improve to 4-1 on the season. Apologize for this video being a little bit later. Yesterday was Niece Day, so I didn't get a chance to watch the game live, and Nieces are better than the Husky basketball team. Not even, this is true even if the Huskies were great, but it's especially true right now. We'll talk about it in just a second. Also, apologize if you hear some weird noises in the background. It's my dog eating. I would wait, but you know what? I'm not going to. And I'm just thrilled that my 13-year-old dog is eating after a little bit of a scare there. It gets worrisome when they're, especially when they're older. She's 13. So, yeah, apologize if you hear a bunch of crunching in the background. I also apologize to anyone who watched the Huskies play in the first half. We always start with the negative in wins, and then we end with the positive. There's not going to be a whole heck of a lot of positive here, if I'm being completely truthful with you. Alcorn State is dreadful. Just a dreadful basketball team. And, on top of the fact that they only score 60 points and shoot 39.7% from the field and 3 from 15 from 3, and the fact they're 0-6, let's just look at their previous results before tonight. They lost by 41 to Utah. They lost by 54 to Utah State. They lost by 6 to Xavier. And before you get excited about that, not that Xavier. Nope. The one that's in Louisiana. They lost by 33 to Tulane. They lost by 23 to TCU. So they make some improvements against TCU, who not a great basketball team, but, more in the game than they were against Utah, Utah State, and Tulane. And that close loss to, I believe, a Division II team. I'm not going to look that up. Don't care. And the Huskies for the first half looked even with them. And so far, we have seen this Huskies team look even with a bad SWAC team and worse in the first half than Seattle Pacific. There's a lot of work to be done. There is a lot of work to be done. Now, there's time. There's a positive for you. There's time for this all to get squared away. I'm just going to let you know right now that if this turns ugly, I'm not going to be shocked. Even with a player as good, as great Osobor is, I'm not going to be shocked if this turns ugly. And to be fair, Osobor was not great on Friday night. Too passive. I appreciate him initiating the offense because I think he probably does it better than any of their guards do, excuse me. But I need more than 4 shots. And sure, some of that's a little misleading. He only plays 29 minutes. I need much more from him. This should have been a game where he dominated. And maybe the Huskies slow played this a little bit. Slow play is probably not the right word, but kind of realized that the opponent made it not necessary for him to have a great game. But man, I would want to build as much cohesion as possible because you're going to face much tougher. I mean, to say you're going to face much tougher opponents than Alcorn State is the understatement of understatements. So I want my best player to start getting cooking. And he's had some phenomenal games. But tonight was not one of them. Helps on the defensive end. Nice to see the 4 assists. I believe that led the team or tied for the team lead. But I need better from him. I need much better play from the guards. With one exception, we'll talk about in the positive side. These guards do not look good. Now, it's early, right? And some of these players have success at a pretty high level. DJ Davis has success. Makai Mason has success. Courtwright has some success. But they just don't look like Big Ten guards. They don't. It could get ugly. it could get ugly. You know what's never ugly? The stuff that Simply Seattle sells. Simply Seattle provides the very best in Seattle sports gear. Great stuff for the Huskies, of course, but the Mariners, Seahawks, Kraken, Supersonics, Storm, Sounders. You can find it all at simplyseattle.com. And once you find it all, use code MOLLYWOP15 to save 15% off your order. It's a great deal from great people. Link in the description. But again, simplyseattle.com. And that code is MOLLYWOP15. Link in the description. I think I already said it. Okay, the positives. Number one, the second half was much better. Much better, particularly offensively. Better ball movement, some shots start to fall. They looked like the much better team in the second half. It's still concerning as heck, just to go back to the negative side, that they looked that bad in the first half against a dreadful basketball team. But there was improvement made, and that's nice to see. That's nice to see. And that's what we've seen all year, is that the first half has been pretty slow. The second half, talent has overcome it. And I'm not saying it isn't some good coaching as well and some adjustments made. I don't see any reason why Danny Sprinkle can't take this program to heights. But the first halves have been really ugly. Two guys really stand out tonight, and they're pretty obvious. Zoom Diallo played a very solid basketball game. I'd love to see the outside shots fall on a more consistent basis, but I see a stroke that suggests he can be a decent shooter. But his ability to actually create his own shot, he's just one of the few guys who I believe can actually do that on this team. I think Makai Mason has that ability as well, but hasn't really shown up yet. And that's an understatement, to be honest with you. But Zoom Diallo has, and maybe I'll get in trouble for saying something like this, but, or not trouble, but, you know, maybe it's too early. I think Zoom Diallo has NBA shot creating ability. The type with his length and with his ability to separate and his quick first step, I think Diallo has that ability to get those shots off at the highest level. He needs to make the shots on a more consistent basis. But he was really good tonight. And he's going to have to be, we talked about it in the last video, they need a big three. And even though Asabor wasn't great tonight, so funny saying that just because his first name is, even though he didn't play his best game, you clearly have a big one. You clearly, I think, might have a big two, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then I think Diallo's that third guy. If they're going to be a tournament team, I think that's what's going to have to happen. That's just going to have to happen. And the shots are going to have to start falling on a more consistent basis, like I said. But the ability to create those shots and still contribute, 5 for 11 is fine. Just want to see some of the outside shots go in. I think he has a chance to be a really special player. I really hope, and this is a tough one for me because I want Zoom Diallo, what's best for Zoom Diallo. I really hope this isn't the only season I get to see him play as a Husky. Now, if he turns himself into a first-round pick, leave. Get the heck out of here. But if he's a second-round guy, I really hope the Huskies can get enough NIL for this dude so that he can play at least one more year with the Huskies. Because I can't help but think he's going to be a significantly better player as a sophomore. Now, he's pretty good right now as a freshman. But I'd love to see what he can do as a sophomore. So I hope they can get that together and get him a nice little payday. The best player on the court, and it wasn't even close, just not even close, was Tyler Harris. And he played like, star is maybe a little too far, but he played such a good game. 27 points, 8 for 11 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. That was nice to see, because what was really actually nice to see was Diallo and Harris combined to go 13 for 14 from the stripe. Another kind of poor game there from Asabor again, 4 for 7. But was nice to see those guys not only make shots, but also get to the stripe and make those shots. Man, his upside is something. And I already can see what the NBA draft nicks are going to say. Certainly has the length. Can that frame hold up, right? Because he's frail. He is a skinny dude. But he is also a guy who's shooting 54% from the field right now. Hate saying the number 54% while wearing this hat. And 42.9% from three. Like, he can shoot. And he can do a lot of things too. He's a good defensive player. He seems to be a guy who understands his role. And I love the offense that he brings off the bench. And, off the bench is kind of like, yeah, he's coming off the bench, but he's playing starter minutes. I believe he played 33. And actually, I think he got the start tonight. So I'll take that back too. But I actually really would like to see him come off the bench. There's just something about, he's not a similar player to Jamal Crawford, but there's a similarity in terms of what they can bring you offensively. And on top of that, he adds that length to your defense as well. He's a really good player. There were a lot of people I talked to who talked about their transfer class, and, obviously Osibor was the jewel, but Tyler Harris was a big get. This was a guy who, at Portland didn't put up spectacular numbers, but really impressed. And he's another guy I'd love to see stick around for another year. But if I was guessing any Husky was going early next year, it's Tyler Harris. So they get the win. It's not an impressive win again. I'd love to have an impressive win at some point. And then you've got to take on Colorado State, which begins a tournament. That's on Thanksgiving. Probably won't have a video until that next day as well for that one. And then we'll recap all of the games they play in that. But they're going to have to play a lot better. Colorado State's not, I don't think, as good as they were last year. They lost to their last two. They lost to Ole Miss by, I think, like 17. Close game against Rhode Island. But to say that Colorado State is better than Alcorn State, yeah. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Really appreciate the support. Really appreciate everyone who's tuned into these. They're not getting a whole lot of views, but the fact that anybody clicks on this is just really means a lot. Thanks so much. Go Huskies and play better.